Really got to try on that left-hand side. What happened?
Oh, but I've gone up and over and bloody head over biscuit. It wasn't enough stability there for myself, but no, I was busting for a bit of meat this game. It didn't seem to work out.
Hello, cheers, and welcome once again to the Scrum of the Earth podcast, the weekly show for news, reviews, great interviews, and so much more, all about the world of rugby. My name, of course, is David Lawrence. I'm an American rugby fan who follows the game wherever I can find it all over the globe. If you'd like to get in touch, I'm easy to find on all your socials, and you can always just drop a good old-fashioned email to the scrumoftheearth@gmail.com. Well, as you have no doubtedly deduced, by now this is not your ordinary weekly episode, but is in fact yet another bonus episode. This time, I am thrilled, I say, to announce the return of the man behind the phenomenal Jack's Rangers show, the foghorn of Section 5, the king of the Carolina Waterfall, Mr. Phil Harris. Phil, my friend, how the hell are you?
That's an amazing introduction. I'm doing excellent, David. How the hell are you?
I thought you'd like the foghorn of Section 5. I thought
That's pretty good. That's pretty good, man.
So how's everything going since you've last been on the show? You've had some big changes. You're now officially a mass hole, no longer taking things for granted up in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I got engaged since the last time we were on the show. I moved to Massachusetts, what I believe is a huge surprise to a lot of people that know me, but it's been really good, man. Like, it's not the same, but it's fine. I'll be here for a while, and then I'll move back to New Hampshire eventually.
Well, you already said your car insurance skyrocketed as soon as you crossed
really
over the border.
Up by almost double. So, no accidents, no tickets, nothing like that. It's just I moved 70 miles away, and then all of a sudden, I don't know how that.
Well, you mentioned that you are engaged. I know that there's some sort of plan for next year for a wedding. Have you had the conversation? Is she going to become Mrs. Carolina Waterfall?
Exactly. Yeah, I think it would be hilarious if we both had mullets walking down the aisle together
and Canadian tuxedos.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not. I haven't rolled that out, by the way. That I might be wearing a Canadian tuxedo for my wedding. So we're going to do Vegas in 2026. I've already spoken to Mags and TK. Wouldn't it be amazing if we were able to do like a preseason game or maybe a game on the West Coast in San Diego or Los Angeles that week, and we could just kind of commute back from there to Las Vegas and get it done. So I've everybody kind of knows this about me. I am a kind of a super fan, I suppose. I guess that's fair to say at this point. But I've never missed a home game. So it's probably going to be the case that we don't have a home game around that time frame because we like to move it back to where it's more presentable weather. I guess is a good way to describe it because people are just not going to come out when it's a blizzard around this time of year. So they're always moving those games, further back for the actual home games. So I don't think we're really concerned about that. It's just a matter of, will I be able to do the show out in Vegas, that sort of thing. And it would be really cool if we could do a preseason game. I think that'd be great out there. So I've already put that in their ear. We'll see.
Yeah, because there is precedent. There was Major League Rugby in Vegas.
That's right.
The little tournament thing. Yeah.
I was the person there. This was like, this was years ago. This was like 6 years ago at this point. So
yeah.
Maybe 150 people in a huge college football stadium. So that was not a great look, but we'll see. That would be fantastic. I think if they were able to get like LA or San Diego out there for a little preseason tournament or something like that, we'll see how it works out. That'd be cool.
Well, speaking of home games, have you already made your plan? What are you doing for the Tuesday game this year? A lot of people I know are they're already hemming and hawing a bit.
I think when we first saw that, we were like, oh, this has got to be a typo, right? And then it turned out that it wasn't a typo. It's actually a Tuesday game. And I talked to Mags about that. He was basically telling me that to make sure that the schedule starts when it does and ends when we need it to prior to the July internationals, that they had to have these midweek games. And it's not something the club wanted to do. It's just something that MLR had to do, essentially. So they're trying to get creative about it. It's not my favorite concept at all, that's ever come out of a MLR strategic little idea session or whatever, but I'm excited about it, to be honest with you, because it's something different. I think the diehards will be there regardless, right? Like you and I will be there. I've never missed a game. So my whole plan is I'm just going to take the day. I'm going to take the day off of work. Just so there's no traffic issues. I normally get out at 5 o'clock. I don't want to be speeding down like a rocket down to Fort Quincy. I'm just going to take the day and then have a good time. You know,
I'm considering the other direction. I'm considering the day after and just staying there, so I'm not going home afterwards. But
it's not a bad idea. I mean, that's what Spider does every single home game. He gets the Hojo right across the street there.
Really?
Yes, he does. Yep, he's very serious about his drinking and not driving. So yeah, I mean that's what he does. He gets there at 10 o'clock in the morning every single game, regardless of what time the game starts.
I always wondered how he got home. There we go.
Staying over. So I think it's a good idea for most people, to do.
Well, speaking of MLR trying new things, I don't think the news actually dropped today, but it was the first time I kind of got my head around it. People are freaking out a little bit. The new they're calling them the anti-scrum laws. The elimination of the scrum. What's your take on the things that have landed in the last day or two?
I don't love it from a competitive standpoint, right? Like we want these USA Eagles to be home and playing within the MLR and the Canadians as well. So they need to have real-time scrum experience, right, to get better to play teams that we're qualifying against and that sort of thing, the teams that we need to beat in a World Cup and, several years down the road. So more scrums, the better from that perspective, because it doesn't look like anything's changing outside of this league. So, what World Rugby does is they trial these laws within smaller leagues and give it like a two-year, run to see if it's something they want to keep around or not keep around. I don't love it, but from honestly with me, like, I was in the scrum back in the good old days as a second row lock, and I love scrummaging. Like, it's so much fun. It's so much like, let's scrum. That was one of my things that we talked about.
It's like James Dealey said today, the scrum is the most rugby-ish thing about rugby.
It really is. Yeah, that's a great way to describe it as well. It's one of the things that's just like drilled into you as a forward. Like, scrumming's fun. Let's do it. Let's scrum down. Let's go.
Yeah.
As a spectator, it's boring. It's boring to see the resets and stuff like that. As somebody that maybe has ADHD undiagnosed, like, I'm just like, God, can we get on with this? Like, let's go.
I don't like the endless resets, but I do love a good scrum, especially when one side can assert dominance. Like, that's what the game can be about. I can turn on that,
Part of the game for sure. But I kind of see the perspective like, if some random Joe Schmo American rugby guys watch, like American sports fan is watching rugby, they're like, what the hell is this? Why is this taking so long? Can we move this along? So I understand making the game faster and stuff like that, but you don't want to lose the essence of what you are as a sport. Scrummaging is a huge part of that.
It seems like decisions are being made for the benefit of USA rugby, like the whole experiment with Anthem, the way that they're kind of being fed some new players this year, and the way they're being taken seriously, but in sort of a different way. Like, that is clearly we are working with World Rugby to help make this a vehicle for success at 2031. But then this decision comes along, which feels like the opposite. It feels like, we'll sacrifice this one area of the game because we think we might get a few more viewers. Is that your feeling behind this?
Maybe a little bit, but I think there's a movement within the game to speed the game up and change the laws to be modern. And I don't necessarily hate that concept, but you don't want to lose who you are as a sport. And I think we're kind of losing a little bit of it. My whole thing is let's have as many scrums as you want, but let's give it one or two earnest opportunities to get it right and engage. Otherwise, just give it a free kick. MLR has been doing that, and I prefer that over practically any other changes to the scrum or anything like that. Give them two opportunities to get it right. If you're not get it right, get a free kick and keep the game going, because the endless restarts are absolutely torturous.
Yeah. So. I like the automatic 7 more than I like this, but anyway, I'm sure we'll see how it unfolds. Maybe it won't be what we think it is.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
Anyway.
Oh boy.
I was before we started. I was talking to you about the new gear you've got, and but the old camera has indeed frozen up on us. Let's see if I can hear you coming through a little bit.
I'm gonna pull this out here.
Aha.
There we go. So I'm just closing all of my millions of tabs that I have open here. I don't know if that'll help. We good? Everything looks good on my side, by the way.
Well, this is a new one. I haven't actually had this happen, so I'm not quite sure what to do. Okay, it's kind of blinking in and out, but the audio sounds like doing a Are we back? There
Can
was
you
kind of
hear
a
me?
miss.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit. There was a little bit of a Mr. Roboto thing going on there.
Oh, weird. That is very strange. Um,
Okay,
are we good?
I think so.
So that was the DC hackers trying to shut the stream down. They always try to attack, digitally attack our show as well. The DC hackers, very jealous group. Very
Stealing color schemes and bandwidth
right.
since.
Exactly. Yep. So close out of the 1 million tabs that I have open. Hopefully that'll help out.
Yes. Well, anyway, last year, pretty good year last year. A little
Not bad.
repeat championship. Really another great performance by our Free Jacks. When you think back on it, it's funny because it seems like forever ago, but it was just. I guess last July is kind of forever ago, but like, what are your fond memories of last year? Was it all about the final for you, or was it the road that led to it? Because it was a tough road, and we had questions along the way, and got there anyway.
I think it's the journey for me. It wasn't the destination. The destination felt like, gosh, I don't want to disrespect Seattle, but it just felt like it. We had that game the entire time. It was competitive, but it wasn't like we were never in doubt of winning that final. There was a couple times where Seattle surged, and we were like, okay, well, they might try to get back in the game. We led the entire time, right? So it wasn't as competitive as it was, and it wasn't as unlikely of an outcome as it was compared to the previous final against San Diego.
Right.
I'll just say that I felt like it felt good in the final. It felt like it was almost automatic to a certain extent that we were going to win the championship after the kickoff occurred. But I will say that the journey leading up to that, I should say, was fantastic, man. Like the word that comes to mind is resilience. This
Yeah.
team showed resilience throughout the entire season. They just did a fantastic job overcoming adversity, injuries to key players.
I was going to say the word depth comes to mind for sure.
Yep. This team is built unlike pretty much any MLR team is, and I think the MLR teams are slowly catching up to the idea that, well, we have to go at least 2 or 3 deep on every single position, or we're just going to get outclassed by teams that are like catching up on that concept. So, we've got really good depth on this team. We did last year, we will this year, and it's something that's one of our strengths for sure. When one guy goes down, it's the next man up. And everybody says that. It's an automatic cliche sports thing to say. But when you have John Poland go down and you bring in Oscar Lennon, who has played multiple premiership games at a very, very high level for Bristol Bears, that's just one of those things where you're like, okay, he's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
We're going to be just fine because he knows what he's doing. He's had that experience at higher levels. And he's somehow ended up here. TK has somehow worked his magic once again to bring a guy that's better than MLR into MLR, and not as some old man in a wheelchair. It's one of the a younger. We never bring in really, really old guys. You ever notice that? It's one of those things. It's not. It's just not our model. It's not the San Diego model that we adhere to around here. So, but yeah,
or the New York model.
Exactly. Rest in peace, New York.
By the way, you remember those great ads we did where it's like Kyle and who else was it? And Holden, I think, and like they're sort of wearing business attire on top, but they're wearing their shorts and stuff, and like they're at an office. We should do more of those, except like we should have TK's magic closet or something where there's like somebody leaves the door open and there's like a big cauldron bubbling in there, and he's like, get it out.
It's a great idea. Yeah, they are super creative on that side. They used to do a lot more of that sort of stuff, and not really lately. I'm not sure why that is. It could be just a thing where they just don't have the resources, right? Like Mags was on the show a couple weeks ago talking about he has to say no to a lot of things that are really good ideas, which is kind of a bummer. But they also make the best of what they have available, which is kind of cool to think about. But getting back to last year, the overcoming the injury issues. Getting it done, like it wasn't a final product throughout the season. They had to tweak things. Set pieces were not great for most of the season. But what was really, really great to see about this team, and it's culture driven, number one. And number two is they were able to figure out their issues. they were able to adjust the issues that they had and play their best rugby when it counted the most. That's what makes a champion, and that's what this team is all about, being
Yep.
so yeah.
I still I still miss Scott Matthew.
Yeah, no.
But anyway, I'm really looking forward to the return of our new coach, I guess you could say. And
We will-
I mean, it's the obvious question. What are you most looking forward to this coming season? We got a lot. New festivals, this slightly weird schedule. Teams are going to be better. Like, I don't see many teams that look like they've really dropped off, but I see a bunch of teams seemingly better.
Yes.
It makes me think that's just a good sign for MLR in general. What are you looking forward to this season?
I'm looking forward to the journey of the three-peat. Hashtag three jacks. That's really, I mean, we've been banging that drum since pretty much right after we won the second championship in a row. The thing now to do and to really become a dynasty is to win a third consecutive title. It's never happened before in MLR. It will really set us apart. I think we're already grabbed that torch from Seattle with that win over them. But I think this will completely separate us from all of the pack if you win in a row. We know as diehard Free Jacks fans that are very, very involved and have our pulse on this thing, that this is the best organization within MLR. But this will certainly prove to everybody that this is absolutely the best team within MLR history if you can win 3 in a row. So my whole thing is I'm looking at it not as a zoomed in, but a zoomed out. That's what I'm most looking forward to is can the Free Jacks do something that is very, very rare in sports? We just saw the Kansas City Chiefs puke on their feet and piss down their leg in that attempt to get a three-peat.
I think my favorite is took a dump in their hands and clapped.
That is a good one. So, it's not an easy thing to do at all. It's a historic thing. And it's going to be great to see this organization who we know that have built up a fantastic roster. They do every single season. There's a couple of unknowns, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But it's going to be great to see this journey, to see where it ends up.
Well, that's my very next question. Out of our new signings, we've had a few. It's not like other American sports where there's a whole raft of newbies getting because the draft system's not robust that way. But we have some interesting signings and some draftees. You've been on top of it. You've been talking to them on your show. Who kind of caught your eye or caught your fancy at least?
One of the guys that was really surprising to me that's coming back is Jack Reeves. This is a guy that was, in the hunt for premiership starts, if not premiership starts, then premiership cup starts.
Right.
At Gloucester, which is a huge prestigious club that they love their rugby there in Gloucester, UK. So he's been there since I think he was like in his teens. So, for him to leave Gloucester and come back to the Free Jacks where he did a loan spell is a huge, huge thing for the sport of rugby within the United States. It's a huge thing for MLR to get a guy like that that's still very young and capable of playing, let's say, at the D2 France level, perhaps, or maybe top flight rugby in Japan or somewhere like that. Like Jack Reeves is not some sort of Island of Misfit Toys kind of guy. Like, he's a legitimate rugby player. And for him to want to come back to the Free Jacks on a permanent deal is a huge deal in my eyes. I think he can absolutely tear it up. I mean, we're missing, a wing and a fullback. I think he can fill that role of a starting wing consistently each week as long as he stays healthy. He can also play center. He's a very, very solid guy. He's actually a judo champion in
Really?
British Isles. Yeah, I think
didn't know that.
Time judo champion. Yeah, it's
wow.
wild. He's super.
Ironically, Major League Rugby might be more financially sound than the Premiership right now. So he might just be thinking of.
Yeah, I'm very worried about the state of rugby in England. With my Wasp going down years ago, that's what kind of has made me separate from like my interest in overseas.
Oh,
rugby.
Interesting.
I just focus on the Free Jacks now.
Yeah, I picked the Worcester Warriors because I live right next to Worcester, and I was like, hey, I can get all kinds of Worcester gear, and people will think I'm a homie, and instead I'll just be like, in my mind, I'll know it's rugby. So yeah, that's been nothing but a disappointment, and yet every year they're like, by the way, we're going to sign this guy for all this money, and I'm like, Weren't you broke 6 months ago? Aren't you being audited right now? It's very strange. Warren Gatlin stepped down today too. Like
I
nothing in,
saw that.
in UK rugby is looking very good right now.
Not looking good. Not looking good at all. So
So some returnees. We do have lots of guys coming back. You've already told me on your show about the new look Kyle. We're going to see a very different Eagle. Going to be
Yep.
front loaded instead of back loaded. I'm looking
That's
forward to that.
yeah. He
Well,
was
so,
at my house not too long ago. We did the whole Operation Rebillet thing or some billet, yeah, where we took 3 of the guys. They're calling them triplets this year. The theme is triplets. So
Okay.
they've split the guys up into groups of like a mini team within a mini team of 3 people. All right. So they're basically like responsible for coming up with a theme amongst themselves, and we helped out with that. So for folks that don't know about this, the Free Jacks did something absolutely insane where they took 13 couples and families and said, here's 3 of our professional rugby players, have fun for a night. And they stayed over at my house here in Worcester. And we just hung out. We played video games. We had a couple adult beverages. We listened to Creed. It was fantastic, man. And Kyle was one of those guys. So yeah, we did an interview with him, a live stream with him, Ross, excuse me, not Ross, but Foster DeWitt and Josiah
Oh, wow.
Moore, a new guy that's been with the Rugby Sevens program, and now he's with us. So it was great. It was fantastic.
Wow.
Mhm.
See, the Free Jacks always thinking, always doing stuff.
I know it was so cool, and that's something that we'll never forget as fans. That the people that were able
Yeah.
to participate in that. So very good times, man.
Well, we certainly can't skip over those who have left. We had some, we were all so excited to see the Red Rocket in action last year, streaking across that field, and he's gone off to LA. And of course, Mitch down to Anthem, which feels like the right move for him. It hurts my insides to think
Yeah.
about, but I'm for USA Rugby. This is part of that plan. Bill and Fitzy just had somebody from World Rugby on the USA Happy Hour, and he was talking about the prep for the 31 World Cup, and it got me super excited. I had been completely kind of buried my head in the sand about it. Now I'm excited. Anthem is part of that. Mitch is going to be part of that. I'm kind of in.
Listen, I feel the same way about Mitch. Like the guy's been a servant to the club for years. First try scorer. He just needed a reset, man. Like personal stuff in the background, he just needed a little reset. He wasn't being selected at fullback after Toby Fricker came in. So who knows what would have happened with that situation if he had stayed, since Toby's no longer with us. But he needed to go. And I understand, Charlotte's a much more affordable city compared to the Boston area. Your dollar travels a little bit longer down there in Charlotte. So nicer weather, all that sort of stuff. Like, I don't begrudge him for leaving at all. In fact, I was very, very sad. I'm still sad about it. I can't believe he's not with us anymore. But, he's one of those guys that, we were close with the show. Like, he was always super cool with us. I talked about this on the 24-hour broadcast that I did. Like, I have Mitch's number in my phone. I've texted with Mitch back and forth before. Like, he's just a different kind of guy. Like, there's some guys that look at what we do and go, okay, that's whatever. And then there's some guys that's like, oh, that's cool. Like, how can I help them? Right. So Mitch is one of those guys. I was very sad. I'm totally okay with admitting that I cried a little bit when he left.
Yeah.
It's just, he's such a huge part of the Free Jacks history. There's very few guys I can think of that are more Free Jack than Mitch Wilson.
It's funny because you and I go on and on about the Free Jacks culture, how that's the core of everything this team does. Mm-hmm. And I feel like how you know that because all the players, the big name players who have left us, we still love. There never been a player that we're like, oh, I can't wait to boo that guy. Like, screw him. I hope he fails where he's going. No, everyone's like, okay, Mitch, good job. Even, back in the Dougie Fife days, it's like, you know what? You weren't getting the ball out on the wing anymore. Okay, go to New Orleans. It's warmer. Go ahead. Like, we just love those guys.
We do. You mentioned Reese McDonald, who was the 2024 back of the year, had an amazing, fantastic coming out season with the Free Jacks, did so well, such an impact player. And then he goes to LA. Weird move. I guess, do whatever was best for you. But I feel completely differently with that move as opposed to Mitch Wilson's move. There's a little bit of what are you doing, man? Like, you don't want to stay here with us? Like, there's a little bit of bitterness to that move for me, and I think I'm not alone in that. Now, what is interesting is that he's injured. He
Yep.
recently got surgery on his shoulder, so he's going to be down at least half the season, maybe 3/4 of the season. So, from a Free Jacks perspective, we need you here and contributing throughout the season. So, I wonder if that was a mutual thing.
I do
Um,
too. I mean, if you're going to be in rehab for 3 months, you might as well be next to a beach, like a nice, sunny Southern Californian beach.
like, listen, I get it, man, but it's one of those. It's a little strange. Like, a guy gets notoriety for being a part of this team and doing so well within this team, and then you leave. There's a bit of Boston bitterness within me.
Yeah.
Move. So,
I think it's his age too. I think he wants to be a world traveler right now. I think he wants to spend these years like seeing how many teams he can play with over a 4-year period, and so far it's working. So
we wish him well. There you
go. When we look at the table from last year, by the way, R.I.P. Dallas Jackals. I'm gonna miss the Jackals. They finally got good. They were right in the middle of that table in the West. They got to, what is it, 8 wins last year? No, 6 wins last year. So, not great, but better than they had before. And they had that kit that was really good. Like, R.I.P. Dallas Jackals. But this is the process where you and I feel like, are getting calluses. We're getting used to this now.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that Max talked about in the interview that I had with him. Is like he anticipates more of this happening. It's just a thing that takes place within professional sports at the very, very beginning of this process. Is that teams will fold, there will be contraction and expansion.
Yep.
And not every team is created equal. Not every team is equal. We know that as Free Jacks fans, and what this organization has done from the very beginning. We look at and compare that to other teams and go, well, they're not quite there yet. They're slowly getting into this model. Like I saw that Houston released festival and theme nights for the first time this year. I'm like,
how
look
creative.
at that. They stole the gold color scheme. They stole the festival idea from us. So it's a copycat league. But yeah, rest in peace, Dallas. I think that's a great example of what you have to do within this league. You have to be competitive, or at least somewhat competitive. Number one, from the very beginning. Or you have to have some sort of like charity case situation where it's like, oh, it's USA Rugby, like Charlotte. We're gonna get better. To hang in there.
Yep.
Or it has to be like you have to embrace the community immediately. And I'm pretty sure my understanding is Dallas didn't really do that. So, yeah.
Well, it's funny when you look back at last year's table, because I literally had forgotten until I went back to look at this. Houston were way ahead. Houston were number one by a lot. They were on top with 67 points, followed by the Seawolves with 57, and then out west, San Diego were in third with 55. That's how many we had to top the East. So like, it didn't unfold the way you necessarily would have thought of. Is Houston going to be that good again? Do they break through? Do they figure out how to get it done in the playoffs? Does NOLA actually get a win in the playoffs this year? And I mean, Anthem's going to get a win, right?
Listen, hope springs eternal in the off season, and we're still at that point. At this point, the games haven't kicked off yet. So yeah, Anthem's definitely going to get a win. I hope it's against DC or possibly NOLA. I think it's hilarious. For the memes just alone is going to be fantastic. I can't wait. Houston is going to continue to be a powerhouse within the West. What's interesting is I don't think the West is as strong as it has been in previous years. Brian Ray and I talked about that a couple weeks back at this point, maybe a month or so back at this point. Time is weird in the off season, like 2 months ago. But that's something that we discussed and we've been observing, is that the West isn't as strong as it has been. Now, in previous years, the West has been an absolute gauntlet. Just look at our points tally compared to theirs, at the end of the season, and we fall well below the first place, I think, in the past couple years with that. So it's one of those things where it'll be interesting to see how the West shakes out this year. And if we're the stronger division, I'm not saying that we will be, or the conference, I should say, how is that going to pan out? I think we'll be fine. I think we're going to be there or thereabouts. There will be no concern from a Free Jacks perspective about making the playoffs. But I'm a little concerned about NOLA loading up. We'll see how that shakes out. I'm very interested to see if they'll be able to win a playoff game, because, they had such, they beat us in the last regular season game, and they had
you and I saw that coming, because remember, they had never made the playoffs, and then they were like, our stated goal is to make the playoffs.
Right.
And then they did, and they forgot that they should have a plan after that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that we talked about to our good buddy Robbie Two Teams, Robbie Hammerschmidt, who likes he likes NOLA and Chicago. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But he's close with the people in NOLA. That was his original team that he picked. So we asked him about that at some point along the line. I was like, hey man, what's the culture like there? Or do you think they can get a playoff win? And of course, he's such a homer. He was building them up. But it just fell on its face. I mean, you get a home playoff game in that environment, in that weather. There was a ton of people there. It looked like it was a ruckus crowd, and you just lay an egg. So we'll see. I mean, they took that loss personally, and they've definitely gotten a lot better players. Interestingly enough, they do have a French owner there that has deeper pockets. At least that's my understanding. So we'll see how it shakes out. I'm very, very interested to see what NOLA does.
I don't want to get sidetracked because I want to be respectful of your time. You have like 7 more podcasts to do tonight after this.
Yeah.
But when I was listening to the USA Eagles happy hour and they were talking to this guy his job with World Rugby is to help coordinate the 31 and 33 USA World Cups. And the thing I've been sweating about is the World Cup is in like September, October, and just into November. That's football time. And we need those stadiums. And I've always thought of the NFL as like the big brother who's going to smack us down when we get too big. No, they're not treating it that way at all. They're coordinating together.
That's right.
Because the NFL knows that rugby has a foothold overseas, and that's what they want.
That's right.
So, and he just floated the idea like, what if France is playing at the Superdome in New Orleans, where there's a huge French population, and meanwhile, the Saints are playing a game at the Stade de France in Paris? I was like, I got very excited.
Well, they're going to figure it out, right? It's multimillionaires and billionaires getting into a room together and trying to shake all this stuff out from a sports perspective. I think it's going to be just fine. Mags talked about this on his podcast that he was on with me recently. We always do a preseason show. It's definitely worth a listen. Like if anybody was to listen to any podcast that I've done in the off season, that's the one to listen to.
He's always so great. He always has insights that you just never, ever would have seen coming.
You have to really listen to it like 2 or 3 times to fully understand what he's talking about because he's a super genius. He's like Elon Musk but cooler and nicer. So
no, you're right. Mags is like the hardest guy to interview because it takes you so long to process the things he just said. It's hard to react in the moment. I'm busy going by my script, and then as soon as it's over, I'm like, damn it, I missed 9 things.
Exactly. Yeah. But he talked about the idea of keeping it on that schedule and how they can make this work from an NFL perspective. The money is going to be there, right? Like rugby is one of the biggest sports in the world. NFL's obviously huge within this country, and it's big in certain places as well, but they're nowhere near the global scale of rugby. So they want to be involved in this process. Mags is doing their bid for a Boston as a host city through Gillette and through the craft group. So they're working hand in hand with.
That's where it would have to be, I would think.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. The whole, the concept is, let's get some of those Northern Hemisphere teams in Boston as a host city and play at Gillette. I mean, can you imagine, Ireland playing Fiji? As we've talked about so many times, all of these Irish folks here in Boston, whether they're Irish or not, are going to be showing up and showing out.
So, out of all the teams out west,
yeah,
which team scares you the most? Or which team are you looking at? Like, it feels like Seattle's day is done. They've been so consistent. They're a great franchise, but it feels like they've gone to the well one too many times, and I feel like that last final kind of slammed the door. San Diego were officially old 2 years ago, and it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
But Houston, they haven't shown it yet. Like, who scares you out west?
Interestingly enough, it's definitely not San Diego. I think they've fallen off. I don't think that they will be the team that they were in previous seasons. I expect them to make the playoffs because this is Mickey Mouse League and practically everybody gets into the playoffs. Everybody gets a participation trophy. But Honestly, I think Seattle is still going to be there. Now they're going to be upset with their 10 not being there. Mac Mason's no longer there, so there's some stalwarts that have not made it. But I'm always
that's a big loss. That might be
it's a big
that's bigger than us losing Mitch, I think.
yeah, for sure. That would be like us losing Jason Pontos.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that they will have to evaluate and try to fix stuff in season. But I think that Seattle will be there or thereabouts because listen, if you're putting your money on who's going to come out of the West, you might as well put it on Seattle because it's happened practically every single year.
Yep.
The tradition, they have a tradition, we have a tradition of winning. It's like that culture is well established. If they'd missed the playoffs, alarm bells are ringing all over, the state of Washington. So,
Though it's funny, like you already referenced the Super Bowl. Like heading into this Super Bowl, my thoughts were Philadelphia is probably a better team, but the Chiefs always win, so you got to take the Chiefs. And that's how I feel like about Seattle. And then we both know what happened when Kansas City took the field last Sunday. And so anyway, that gave me hope that maybe the dinosaur is finally drowning in the tar. Am I mixing up my metaphors here?
No, you're good. I'm following you. Houston would be my second pick. I think I predict them to be second in the West coming out of the regular season. I just don't know if they have it in them to slay the dragon and make it to a final. It's never happened before. I just wonder about that. I feel like Seattle has the pedigree and the culture to overcome throughout the season and make it to the playoffs and continue their winning ways.
So tell us about the playoff format this year. Is it again? What is it? Is it a couple of bye weeks, a couple of bye teams? What are we doing this year?
I think it's the same as last year, if I'm recalling correctly. I don't pay much attention to what happens in the postseason until we get close to it. I know that it's been announced, but I believe it's the same format as last season, where if you're the first, you're getting a bye, and I believe that. Yeah, I don't know.
We're really good at this.
Yeah, we're great. I'm not paying attention to the playoff format at this point. I just know that the Free Jacks are going to make it.
And so, who else do you see? Who's our final four? Let's do that at least.
Okay.
I'm with you. It's got to be New England. I don't even know who else in the East. Everyone seems to think Chicago, but they've been saying that almost like as soon as they announced the franchise, people were like, "Well, Chicago's going to be good." And I'm like, "Well, maybe."
My final four, and I believe my prediction was the minimum expectations you have to make the final four as a Free Jacks, fan. That's your minimum expectation is you want that team to make it to the final four. I would say that it's going to be New England, NOLA.
Wow. Okay.
Houston.
They've made a ton of moves.
Seattle. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, in the East we got NOLA and New England, and in the West you're going to have Houston and Seattle. That's my guess.
Wow. Dougie Fife could be coming here for like a conference final. Except he never plays here. As soon as he left, he was like, "Well, I'll go back and visit and have a beer with you after the game," but he's never on the field.
He's technically retired. He had an ankle injury in the offseason.
Oh.
I talked to him, when was this? About 2 months ago. I saw him at the championship for Mystic River and he's doing some coaching for Mystic, so I was able to talk to him after the game. And he was like, "Well, we'll see how it goes." He loves Ryan Martin. He's one of his favorite coaches that he's ever had.
Okay.
Of course, he was here under Ryan Martin and
right.
under Ryan Martin as a head coach. He said, I've got to heal up with my ankle. If they call me in an injury crisis after the first couple weeks of the season because the weather's shit, is basically what he was saying. He might pick up that phone. So we'll see. Maybe Dougie returns in red, white, and blue for a final little send-off.
It would. He's a great guy. And he's one I wanted to root against him when he left, and I've been completely unsuccessful in doing so.
Yeah, it's such a nice guy. It's so crazy that a Six Nations try-scorer knows who I am. Like that's insane. To think of that.
Well, it's the obvious question, the elephant in the room.
Oh yeah,
is it a three-peat? By the way, did you hear the thing about the Chiefs went to Pat Riley and were asking about like, will we have the right to use the phrase three-peat
And he said,
after we win this Super Bowl? And they were talking about like maybe we have to pay him and all this stuff for the. That's pretty cocky talk before you win the Super Bowl.
yeah, it is pretty cocky. I wouldn't expect the Free Jacks to do something like that just because we're such a classy organization. Yeah, it will be a three-peat. I don't see any team stepping up to knock out the Free Jacks in a final. Now, of course, we've got a lot of things that we have to do before we get there. There's unknowns like who's playing fullback. Anybody know? Not me.
Nope.
Like it's just something that we have to, see what happens throughout the season. And hopefully, it develops into a position of strength because right now it's a position of weakness within the Free Jacks organization. As far as I'm
Have we ever put Paula back at 15? Has he ever?
no.
I don't think so. I don't think I've ever seen him under the high ball, right?
Kicker, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's definitely unknowns like what's Ryan Martin like. Obviously, we know that he's a good coach. He was a good coach when he was here previously. He's gotten better. He went to Melbourne Rebels and went to Toyota, so we know that he's in his coaching journey. He's definitely better than he was when he was here. We'll just have to see how that shakes out, right? Like,
Yeah.
will the culture continue to thrive within the locker room of the Free Jacks organization? I imagine that it will be because you've gotten upwards of 70% retention.
Yep.
But there's some unknowns. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't see anybody. There's nobody that can be like they're definitely going to beat us. I don't think
it's hard to see.
I said this last year. Like who's going to beat us? Like who's better than us? The answer is nobody is better than us right now.
Yeah, I'm not predicting 16-0, but I think you and I talked about it. I think we both landed on 13-3 around there. Just because you are going to lose something, it's going to happen.
Yep.
We've got that Tuesday game. I can tell you this: despite the fact that this season's probably going to be truncated by a week for having that squeezed in, the so-called storm week, it's going to feel longer. This season is going to feel longer than last year, right?
Absolutely. You're starting in February, right? So it definitely will feel longer, but it's going to be fun. It's never not fun. I always tell people this, like, now is a great time to be a Free Jacks fan. All days are great days to be a Free Jacks fan. Every single day is a great day to be a Free Jacks. It's just a great organization. They're so welcoming. They're so community focused. This team is likable. You've got teams, in other sports where like, God, they're so good, but they're just a bunch of jerks. Like I don't want to root for this team, but they keep winning.
Have you bothered to watch the new Full Contact, the Six Nations doc?
No,
I'm like, you guys managed to make every single person you talk to completely unlikable. Like, that's the one thing you can't do. And they're like, let's make this guy look like a dick.
Yeah.
Job done.
Let me tell you, like, I talk about this until I'm blue in the face with anybody that will listen. And then some people are just like, oh, I've had enough. But rugby is such an amazing sport. We both know this. The people that are listening to this absolutely understand that. But marketing in rugby is just like, what if people, the dumbest people are in charge of rugby marketing?
So strange.
It is so strange.
Which is one of the opportunities that MLR has in front of it. And I think people like Mags, it's good to have people like him at the helm because he knows that.
Yep.
He and his ilk, they recognize the advantages we have built in and taking care of the money, doing those things properly, growth strategy. We're doing those things right.
Yeah. And we're still not profitable. That's what's interesting is like, there's a little bit of scariness when it comes to that sort of thing. When you start really thinking about it, is like, how long are these people going to continue to, fit the bill for this sort of thing to eventually become successful? But as Max says, it's a legacy play. It's a long-term investment. And hopefully we can get this thing to be successful. And it's things like what you do and what I do and what other people do that try to move this thing forward. We're all trying to climb up this mountain together. We're not nearly close to the top. So we all have to band together to get this thing up the hill.
Well, speaking of which, I already referenced it. You've got like 3 more interviews after we hang up here. Yeah. What's coming up for the show? What can we look forward to? What are you looking forward to for the Jacks Rangers show?
I cannot wait for our first watch along this weekend with Bozo6 and myself. I'm going to be over at the Granite Bunker there in parts unknown, New Hampshire. We're going to be watching New England versus the LA Dickheads live. So that for those that aren't familiar with the watch along concept, is we'll be watching the game off screen. And then we'll be just commentating on what we see. So as long as you're watching the game, if you want to mute the commentators, which I believe for most people is something that they're willing and able to do, you can us provide some alternate commentary, some Homer commentary, Free Jacks fans. Bozo's very, very high level coach and was a referee as well. So he definitely knows what he's talking about.
Bozo's good on comms.
100%. He's really good. He could do it professionally. I've told him this before. I think he would be very, very good at it. And then there's just me there talking shit. So
yeah, you and me would be like, "Where's the vuvuzela?"
Yeah, exactly. We're just there to have fun, but it's a good time. So that's happening at the end of the week. Obviously,
Nice.
We got a Jack Reeves interview. He was scheduled to come on. I just recently heard breaking news that he has to move it back to tomorrow. So that will be 8 p.m. tomorrow. We're doing a stream with Jack Reeves, our new old winger. Coming over from England. So that'll be really, really exciting. And we're going to have that live for our Patreon members, but also we're going to be releasing that later in the week as a general public thing. But tonight, me and Diamond Dave, who's been with me since the very, very beginning, back in April of 2021, we're going to be breaking down and talking about the game upcoming against the LA Dickheads. Our little preview will be coming out very, very soon. We're doing that tonight.
Speaking of good comms, Dave, love the guy.
Unreal. He's the good one out of all of us that are on the Jacks Rangers. So he's the nice one to our naughty. Such a great guy. Yeah, and I'm super lucky to have found him because he provides that coaching aspect of it. Like he breaks stuff down. He's an educator by trade, so he explains things very well. And
this is a guy who's an educator. He's used to being in front of people explaining things. He's the huzzah guy at the games. He's on your show all the time sharing his insight. And yet, shy guy, doesn't want to show off. Doesn't you gotta, like, I've tried a few times to get him on the show, and he's like, maybe. And I'm like,
he's also very busy. He has 2 young kids, so
yes,
I'm very, very thankful that I kind of like the way I presented it to him when I first tried to recruit him to the show is like, I'll do everything. You just have to show up. So, thank God he does show up because I don't think the show would be half as successful as it is if Dave was not in the secret sauce in this mixture here in this recipe, because it would just be me talking shit and trying to do the best that I can. But he really he ups the level of the show for sure.
Well, you got a lot of secret sauce, but Phil, you are the prime mover. I'm proud to be your friend. I can't wait to see you in 4 weeks and 4 days. It looks like. Yeah. It's going to be great. It's probably another roller coaster, but I'm ready for it, and I'm so excited.
We're at the end of the light of the end of the tunnel is visible, and it's the light of a lantern for our Free Jacks, and here comes the three-peat, man. What's not exciting about this, man? Like, if people can't get fired up about the Free Jack season, do you have a pulse? Like, let's go. It's a time, baby. I can't wait.
Phil, my friend, you are the best. You're Cheers. Best. Talk to you soon, and be well.
Huzzah!
It gives me great pleasure to be here today.
Oh, it does, neat. You want to tempt the wrath of the whatever from high atop the thing?